Hi, everybody. I am Lynn Kelso, and I teach storytelling at Northwestern, and I'm the artistic director for Imagine You. And we're opening a play tonight, The Ballad of Mulan. So I've got a double whammy night tonight. I'm so excited. I've been charged by Nancy to tell you all the rules. So let's get the rules out of the way first. Here we are in little boxes again. I always feel like there have to be a couple things that we share, and that is that we're excited when someone tells a story, and when the story's finished, in a way to how do we support that, because we're muted. So a clap like this or a clap like that will be deeply appreciated, and we always are supportive of anyone that's sharing, because these are gifts that we give to each other. The other thing that we can use is the chat, and as the teller is telling the story or after they've told, don't hesitate to say, I had the same thing happen to me. Oh my goodness, you've described that beautifully. So give them as much support as you would like in that chat, because again, it's another beautiful way to respond and support each other. This is such a great opportunity for us, and we love to combine our two worlds of the Northwestern students and Ollie, because we live in two different worlds, really, when we're here at school and you're spread all around. And to bring us together is what storytelling is all about. It's making connections, it's creating empathy, and it's giving a chance for us to share lives. So we've done the boxes, we've done the clapping, we've done the cheering. Oh, the rules of the story. Sorry, Nancy, I will not neglect you. Here we go. The story must be true, and it must be on theme. Now, I asked Nancy if I could add this to the theme. The theme is about change, and it's about climate, but it's also about us. It's about how we react to our world and how we respond to nature, how we respond to one another, and how we can collectively create change. And we really can only collectively create change if we understand each other and we see each other and accept each other's differences. So I'm making that a little broader. And any of you Ollie people, if you would like to sign up to tell a story, when you hear me say, this is also about change, the way we look at the world and how we have changed our opinions or ideas, sign up in the chat, and Nancy will put you on one of the little numbered sheets. So the way we are managing the tellers tonight is, Nancy, will you hold up one of your little sheets? So she's put all the people who had said they'd like to tell on a slip with a number. And I'm going to ask Jessa to call out a number, and Nancy will pull it out. Now, I need to tell you who Jessa is. Jessa's my partner, and she's actually been my student, and she's also my education and engagement Imagine You person. I am relying on her, and she's already coming through, that the story must be true and the story must have stakes. I told her to remind me anything I forgot, and she's doing it. And you might look on the top row up here, this handsome man in the middle of these four women is Mark Berry. He's our technical idea man who knows how to operate this. So, all right, I'm going to keep going on the rules here. I sort of fragment my rules. I've got to stay on task here. I'm just so excited to be here with all of you. The story is 5 to 8 minutes long, and you're not allowed to read from a page or reference notes. And it must be your story to tell. Can't be someone else's. We'll draw the numbers. As Nancy said, we need to get to know each other a little bit. One of the things that's really important is to feel comfortable when you're sharing stories and not feel like you're just telling to this strange group of people. So I know 10 minutes is not exactly speed dating in how to know somebody, but we're going to have a chance to be in smaller breakout rooms. And as soon as I stop talking, we're going to get into breakout rooms. We're going to spend about 10 minutes with a prompt. And the prompt that we're asking you to consider is to share a memory about snow, rain, heat, or ice. And Jessa has an example from the book that she wants to share to sort of prompt you thinking about how you're going to tell a story. And it's just a very, very short time because we're only in 10 minutes. All right, Jessica, go for it.
Yeah, so in the story of More by Hope Jaron, she gives an example in her chapter on melting ice of when she was 6 years old and her best friend was a chunk of ice named Covington. She talks fondly about walking to kindergarten and kicking a chunk of ice on the walk. I don't know how many people here grew up in snowy climates, but I definitely have kicked many ice chunks over the years as well. And so that's like, you know, an example. It can be as simple as that. And she was so sad when that chunk of ice melted. She also talks about other examples in the icy, you know, snowy climates of like hockey games on frozen ponds and skating on those ponds. If you're from a warm area, you know, you obviously have a different experience of climate and how that has affected you in different ways. But these stories are not 5 to 8 minutes. It can just be as simple as I had a best friend, which was a chunk of ice. But just thinking about your own relationship to weather and climate and the environment around you.
And that's actually going to be the breakout room, or it could be a story that you actually tell as a designated storyteller. So these breakout rooms, if you haven't done them before, there's going to be a facilitator this time who will sort of help you introduce each other and to one another and sort of keep the conversation rolling. It's an awkward process. And I will tell you, Mark knows how to bring you out of the breakout rooms, so you are safe. The first time I taught, I didn't know that process yet when I got onto Zoom, and I was panicked. How am I going to bring my students back together? Fortunately, I just kept pushing. I did what the students do. They just push buttons, and somehow when they push the button, they find the right one. You just can't be afraid of technology. That's the key. So don't be afraid of these breakout rooms. Mark is going to put you in them. We're going to spend about 10 minutes in them, and then we're going to choose the first teller and launch this evening of storytelling for all of us. All right, Mark, do your thing. Do your magic.
Great. I'm going to open the breakup rooms now, and you all get sent right in.
Bye. See you in 10 minutes. Jessa and I may stop into your room. As always, that happens too quickly. We weren't ready. I hope that the rest of you felt the same way. We wanted a little more time. And I just have to share one of the memories. Randy wanted and was a weather person, and she liked being a weather girl, wanted to be a weather girl because she was on TV. She had new clothes and she didn't have to be right, which I think is wonderful. But the part that's great is she began to really notice the weather because her parents were in a different area in the country, and she watched weather change. So not only did we understand her relationship with weather, we understood her observation of change. And that's one of the things good storytellers do, is they observe not only the weather, but people and the human condition. So I'm not going to talk anymore because I want to hear these stories. So we actually have 6 tellers, and Nancy has numbered their names, and I'm going to call out the number, and we're going to find out who the first teller of our evening is. Nancy, with a drum roll here, what number and name for number 1?
So Lily Sorkin, are you here? Woohoo! I see you. I see you on my. So are you prepared to tell a story?
I think so.
Nope.
I've only ever.
Let's do a clap. Everybody gets unmuted. Let's do a clap. Handshake or pats.
Woo!
All right, we're for you.
So Lily, if everybody could mute themselves, and I'm going to put the timer on, and I will let you know when you got you don't have to do it for 8 minutes. If it doesn't last that long, that's fine, but I will warn you. I'll give you a 1-minute warning. How's that?
Sounds great. Okay. So I went to an all-girls school for 13 years, kindergarten through 12th grade. And throughout that time, I learned a lot about like sustainability just because, I mean, we were in New York City. And so there was kind of this idea that like, because we were in the city, we had to do like what we could, but it didn't really have the same, like it was a lot more kind of the illusion of doing things rather than actually doing things. We had compost bins, but no one really knew how to use them. We would do this thing on Fridays where it'd be like lights out Fridays, and we would just not have the lights on in the hallways and the classrooms. If it was bright enough, there would be no lights on. So like more about educating about sustainability and things like that rather than doing significant things. And then my senior year, so last year, there was a change in the New York City like sanitation system where, but previously, because my school had been one of the first places to do it, the city had paid for our compost bins. And so they didn't have to like pay or deal with it. The city would just come and like take them. And the city stopped doing that. They decided that composting was no longer something they cared about. So they stopped their composting program. They just stopped. And so my school, the compost bins were still there, and no one told us anything about it, which was kind of weird because having compost bins and not using them is actually bad because all of those kinds of compostable materials that you use instead of paper or plastic get sent to the dump, and because they're biodegradable, they release methane gas rather than being recycled like normal plastic and paper would be. So I was in environmental sustainability class my senior year, and my teacher she was a science teacher, but she was a really big part of the sustainability efforts at my school. And she told us what was happening. She was like, the city stopped our composting program. They aren't composting anymore. And the school is lying to you. And we were all very upset. We were like, well, that's ridiculous. Like, this is a private school. You guys have the money. You can just pay for composting yourself. And so we made a big to-do. We like told everyone what was happening and to stop composting things because it wasn't going where they wanted it to go. And it was actually like, you should put them in other bins that are correct so that we don't produce unnecessary amounts of methane gas in the landfills. But we made a big to-do. We sent emails. We like word of mouth. We were like, the school is being really cheap. They're not paying for composting. And we got the school to pay for composting. They started up the composting system again. They hired an outside like contractor or composting. I don't know what the word terminology would be for that. But they hired an outside company to come and take our composting because the city wasn't doing it anymore. But it was so weird because for a school that cared a lot about making us think that it was eco-friendly and like that we were composting and we were conserving energy, and they had built a new building recently that was supposed to be like eco-friendly in some way. It was, I don't really know exactly how, because they don't really tell us anything. They tell us like vaguely what was happening, but like they didn't give us details, which was ridiculous because they like, why not share with your students the like good things you're doing? But it was all kind of more of a facade than anything else. But because of this teacher and because of the things we learned and the like system in which we grew up, even though that system was not really in place to do what they told us it was there to do, it made us want to do those things. And so it did end up ultimately having an impact. And so we started composting again at school. Yeah, thank you.
Yay, 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 yay. Let's do the applause. Lily, that's wonderful. Congratulations. I have to make this statement. You are the future. The people who are your age and younger are the future. And I will tell you, your age came to Northwestern years ago. I was an advisor and we had the new student week, and all of you about 4 or 5 years ago started to say, where are the recycling bins? There's no place to recycle these packages of lunches that you have gotten us. And it was in that moment that Northwestern got the key directive from the students. You need to have the right recycling everywhere around here. So you guys are the ones that are changing our world. Thank you. I really am excited. That is a wonder. Wow. It's so good to see you take action. It really, really is. That was a wonderful story to launch us because it was really directly related to the whole sense of the book that One Northwestern has chosen. Thanks. Thanks, Lily. All right.
I'm just going to unmute right now and say, after each storyteller, let's all flood that chat for appreciation, because it takes a lot of courage to like stand up here in front of everybody and tell a story. So if you can make a comment for every single storyteller, it will, like, I'm sure it will warm Lily's heart and every single other person that comes up here.
Thanks,
Maybe
Jessica.
a personal connection, a congrats, whatever it is.
Yeah,
amazing.
Take a look, actually, everybody, at the chats, because it's wonderful to see the reinforcement that you all are giving. And you were a wonderful storyteller. Passion leads to change. Yes, 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 Marco. That I could comment on all the comments. They make you excited and they make you really realize you're listening. We have an audience that are good listeners as well as tellers. Thank you. And I love fabulous, fabulous. All right. Shall we go forward with our number 2? Nancy.
Yes, Finnegan Rawlings is number 2. Finnegan, are you here?
Finnegan is here. I am he.
Hot dog. All right.
Let's do a
Take it away.
Can we do some handshakes to start him out, to give him an energy? Yes, 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 yes. All right.
All right. Explosions were sounding in the air around me as I floated in the middle of the ocean at midnight, and I realized I wasn't alone in the water. Now, this all happened in that brief period right after Delta and before Omicron took center stage, when we were like, it's over, and my family decided to take a vacation to Hawaii and visit some of our family friends. And throughout the week, as we spent our time with our family friends, they kept mentioning that that Friday there was going to be a night swim. It was always a whispered thing. There's going to be a night swim, a night swim. It was very exciting. And personally, I was absolutely terrified because I have one greatest fear in life, which is shark. Not sharks, a shark. And it's not a great white shark or the great white shark from Jaws. It is specifically the animatronic robot shark from the Jaws ride at Universal Studios. Now get this, folks, I've never been on that ride. I've only seen YouTube videos of that ride. It is since closed, but still, every time I'm in water and I go underwater and I close my eyes, I'm convinced I will come out of the water, open them, and its robotic horror will be right there in front of me. So each time this night swim was mentioned, I was not happy at all. So the day rolled around and the peer pressure got to me, no pun intended, as we walked out to the pier where their boat was parked for us to go drive out and swim. and it stunk to high hell of just brine and fish. And as somebody who was already not happy to be there, the very unpleasant rotten fish smell wasn't helping whatsoever. So my family and our family friends all packed on to their small little schooner boat, and drove off into the night. And I just remember having my jaw absolutely clenched with nerves because I had experienced virtually this very scene in the Jaws ride, the boat going off into the middle of the ocean and the black water surrounding everything. And there was only one light on the boat. It was a little warning light. It was a red, it would blip, it would go on and off and on and off. And it was red. And so it would go off and then the red light would go on and I'd take a quick glance around me at everybody. And for the most part, everybody else looked just as terrified as I did. The father of our family friends then stopped the boat and declared, "Here we are." And next thing I know, I still don't know why this happened. My legs started moving. I stood up and I jumped in the water first before anybody else. And I still don't know what compelled me to do that, but everybody else jumped in the water after me. And the father of our family friends very kindly, recognizing that I was terrified of the water, was constantly mentioning, both on the boat and once we got in the water, of we're out here to see something. This isn't just a night swim. We're out here to look at something in particular. And he got out this huge floating floodlight that poured light down into the water. And so we put on our goggles and we had these inflatable tubes, and I was strapped like a medieval rack, except horizontally, looking down into the water, literally going through some form of emotional torture as we sat and waited for whatever was going to appear in this water. This was, of course, punctuated by the fact that it was also the 4th of July. So it was silent. We were waiting for something in the water. And then there was the explosion of a firework every once in a while that would scare the absolute bejesus out of everybody as well. So it was a very, very traumatic situation. Because we were there to see something, as I will soon enlighten you all about, other tour boats started coming up, and we were hearing jeers from the adults and the tourists on the boat, and hearing the gossip of the college-aged guides who were there guiding all of the tourists. And one of the other tour boats began to play the Jaws theme. Da-dum, da-dum, dum, 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 dum. And I don't know who it was, but they are still #1 on my hit list of people who I will never forgive, ever. So I was waiting there, and then just to add insult to injury, I get chronic nosebleeds. And so I had on this snorkel mask that covers my nose. And out of nerves or whatever it was, I began to get a nosebleed, and it began to fill up the mask. And as a avid fearer of sharks, I knew that the one thing sharks love in water is human blood. That's exactly what leads them to the humans in every single piece of media ever. So I had a choice. Do I leave on this mask that is rapidly filling with my own blood, or do I take it off and dump it and potentially lure whatever is out here for us to see towards me? Then I was tapped by my sister, and I looked down into the water, and suddenly all of those fears of the blood, the sharks, the Jaws theme completely faded away as a huge manta ray swam into the view of this big light that was shining down onto the bottom of the ocean. It had about a 10-foot wingspan. It was absolutely massive, and it swooped and swirled with all the majestic grace of a ballerina, except because it was in the water, it was not confined by gravity or any sort of human physical limitation. And the light had attracted krill, which the manta ray eats. And so it swooped and it went around and around, making these large circles up towards our light. And I was absolutely calm and enraptured by the sight of the natural beauty of this massive beast. And, it was in that moment that, I realized no man-made mechanical horror or robot shark could stand the test of, the beautiful nature of this absolutely humongous beast. And the manta ray swooped and swirled and eventually went off into the night, satiated by its large feast. And we got back onto the boat. All of us are just jaws almost on the floor, no pun intended, with jaws there. But the boat drove back, and we got back onto the pier and drove back to our friend's house, our minds filled with the image of the dancing manta ray that I will never forget. And we all dried and showered off and sat on the couch when my friend announced that it was time for our nightly movie and that we would be watching Jaws. Thank you very much.
Oh, Finn, that was just absolutely wonderful, wonderful. And such a way to realize our relationship to nature can change, and our sudden awe can be overtaken and take over and replace that fear that we once have had. I even think about that when I look at winter trees. I'm trying no longer to see them as bare and gray without leaves. I try to look at them and see them as sculptures in the sky, against the sky, and especially as it's snowing too. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. I have to tell you, this is the kind of thing that I just get excited. You're spending an evening, a Thursday evening, and unexpected stories fall into our world. All right, we're getting some lovely, lovely chats. Oh, I love a ray of light. That's a delightful one. Yay. Wow, we're just racing along here. I feel like we've been to New York City and Compost, and now to beautiful night swims. Oh, a night swim right now sounds really cold, right? We'd have to be in the right climate. All right, Nancy, who shall be our third storyteller?
Looking for Suzanne Ferran.
Oh, yay. Suzanne is one of our favorite tellers who's been, Suzanne, have you been at every telling that we've had?
Pretty much, pretty much. And
I can't wait.
this is one of my favorite events of the year. As you can tell, I'm an Ollie member because Ollie members can be here for all 5 times this happens, whereas students rotate through much more. My story is about change, how it happens, and how it kind of sneaks up on you. And it's a story about a change in myself that led to change for other people. I was planning a big change in my life. I was in my mid-40s. I had been in the advertising business for about 20 years, and I was done. That madman life of the advertising business, I could not sustain that any longer. Plus, I had 2 children who were about to, were becoming adolescents. They were like 5th grade, 6th grade. And I thought, man, you cannot let some nice Polish lady raise your children from here on out. You need to get in the game. So analyzing this problem, I thought, well, you know what? If you would become a school teacher, you could be on the same schedule as your kids. And I was not one of those people who had been a camp counselor. I had never been a babysitter. I had no particular affinity for children, except my 2. And I said, okay, that seems really good. I'll have the same hours of my kids. I'm going to change my whole life, turn it upside down, and become a school teacher. And so I went back to the School of Education and Social Policy and got a master's degree in elementary education. So that's a big change, going from an MBA to an elementary school master teacher. And I thought I could do this. I mean, I had been a good learner my whole life. I knew more than a 12-year-old. Certainly, I could become a teacher. How naive I was. My first year, as all first years, I struggled mightily. And it was because I was trying to control the kids all the time. And my main lesson was the tighter I gripped, the worse it got. But I did make it through my first year as a 5th grade math teacher. And at the end of the year, the scores of my students were published in the newspaper, the ISAT test, not for individuals, but associated with my classrooms. And I learned that 72% of my students had met or exceeded standards. And I was mortified that this was in the newspaper. Everybody knew that less than 3/4 of my students had met state standards. And I thought, this is never going to happen to me again. So I got to work over the summer. I made some changes in the way I taught. I learned that I had to get the kids to cooperate with me if I was going to get anywhere. If they were going to learn anything and I was going to affect those scores, they needed to work with me. So we worked together. I learned that you need people on your side, not just your own brilliance and your own perseverance and your own patience. I needed a bunch of 11-year-olds to be on my side if we were going to make this change. And through trial and error, we did make progress. We we learned about common denominators, and we learned about acute angles. We learned all of the wonderful things that you learn in 5th grade math. And as a result of the hard work of all of us and the change that I made, which ultimately affected a change in those kids, the next year, 92% of my students met or exceeded standards. So the moral of the story is, you cannot make change by yourself. You need co-conspirators to make something happen. And I will tell you 2 things. One is, one of my favorite things about being in Evanston now is when I see those 11-year-olds who are now 31-year-olds and they give me a big hug. And I think, you know what, I could not have done this without you. And the other thing I would say is, I see from those windows on Zoom that there are parents here tonight of some of my students. Thank you.
Oh, big hands for Suzanne. Oh, Suzanne,
Thank
you did it again. You did it again. You bring stories every year to us. I always think, what's next?
You know, you spend a lot of time with kids. There are a lot of stories. Spend 15 years with 11-year-olds. A lot of stories come from that.
Oh, we want you back in the classroom. We need you desperately. Actually, I love that the Northwestern students can hear a story about a teacher who was dedicated and how it took that collective, collective to make it happen. Oh, that was just beautiful, Suzanne. Check out the chat. You're getting all kinds of wonderful chats. I love this chat. In fact, Finn was invited to write that story up and submit it. I love that you have already recognized the power of that and the beauty of not having it written and having it be so spontaneous, just as Suzanne's was. And it's all about change. We're on a journey, and on that journey, change happens. And it's how you deal with that change and how you confront it and embrace it. And Suzanne, you really did. Wow. That is, I also love that you're still feeling the resonance of having parents and adult children. That's a joy. And teaching is one of the best professions in the world. It really is. And I have to say, as I sat, and I wasn't going to say this, but I will tell you, Finn is currently in my class, and I'm just sitting there as that teacher who's so proud of him and going, this is why I keep teaching, because I love my job. It's a gift from my students to be in that place. So I'm going to stop talking. I love Margot's, when we pay attention, we can become the kind of teacher students deserve. Good for you. Wonderful comment too. All right. I feel kind of breathless. That was so much. I feel the riches that you have all started the sharing process with. So let's keep going. We've got 3 more. And I want to make sure we don't leave anybody out. I love the chats. Thank you, everybody, for being so engaged and responsive. It's really beautiful. All right, Nancy, who's the next?
Okay, Jack Jordan, are you in the room?
Yeah.
Yes, hello.
There he is.
Hot diggity. Well, take it away
All right.
and I'll get this timer going.
Well, thanks to everybody who's talked tonight. This is a story I've never told before, and so we're just going to see how it goes. This is from, just for some background, this is actually a story about Evanston, so I think it'll be cool for the residents and the students. It's a story I came upon in my research. It was the early 1990s, and though the environmental movement was about 2 decades old at the time, like sustainability and climate planning were still very much kind of in their early years. And a man by the name of Stephen Perkins, he lives in South Shore neighborhood of Chicago. He's got his PhD in religious psychology, and he believes spiritually that he has something that he needs to do in order to improve the sustainability of our world. And so he forms this group he forms this group that brings together people from all different faiths, and they meet every month at this the Lutheran Theology School at Hyde Park. And their whole goal is to come up with a common language for sustainability from all the different faiths, whether it be Judaism or Christianity, Baha'i, Muslim, all different faith traditions. And they work together for months and months, and they put together this really beautiful document called One People, One Place, One Creation, Sustainability at the South End of Lake Michigan. Beautiful document. And they publish it and they put it out to the world, and absolutely nothing happens. Doesn't get any traction. No one buys into it. No one seems to really care that, there's this beautiful document that had been put out in the world. And so Steve, feeling maybe a little discouraged and, going through some life phases, he moves up to Evanston, and he decides that it's time to maybe try again. And so he has his database from his work email, and this is in still the 90s at this point. And he decides, I'm going to reach out to folks I know and see if they'll join a new faith circle in Evanston. And so he reaches out. He knows 6 people will come because he has their names on the list. And to his surprise, he shows up to the meeting and there's 20 people there. And so they start a new organization called, I believe it's the Interreligious Sustainability Circle in Evanston, the Evanston Interreligious Sustainability Circle. And they end up meeting every month for 18 years. And in those 18 years, they accomplished a whole lot that I think we all could learn from. They would host monthly events on different topics, whether it be energy or sustainable transportation or food. And they found out that when they convene the public together, and they would present on the issue, and they ask people, is this something you care enough about to start a group about it, to volunteer? And oftentimes people said yes. And so from this, there were a number of groups that began forming around Evanston called Evanston Energy Future or the Evanston Community Land Trust that were focused on sustainability issues in the community. And in the 90s and early 2000s, these groups grew. And in addition to this, they started, Stephen's group started hosting a monthly or a yearly Earth Day event. They would host every year, and they would invite people from the community. And their whole goal was to try to get the city of Evanston to really buy in on sustainability and hopefully make a climate action plan where they could figure out how to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Well, the city of Evanston wanted nothing to do with this, at least for the first 4 or 5 years. But then finally, a new city manager was hired. And though they were an accountant by training, they knew really nothing about sustainability. They were willing to listen. And so, as Steve describes it and others I've talked to, there was this one magic Earth Day event where they do all the presentation, and they're in this big church, I think one of the Lutheran churches here in Evanston. And the city manager says, this is all extremely compelling. All these residents care about it. Let's make a climate action plan. And the state representative that was in the room for Evanston at the time said, and you know what? I'll go to Springfield and I'll find funding to make sure that we have a city staff person dedicated to this. And so with that, the city signed on to the Kyoto Protocol, which required that you reduce your greenhouse gas emissions below their 1990 levels by 7%. Well, because Evanston's greenhouse gas emissions had gone up since then, they would need to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by 13% in only 4 years to meet the commitment. It was an impossible task. And so the residents, though still impassioned, they said, let's get to work, let's do it. And they met with each other, and about 150 people came together and they created the Evanston Climate Action Plan. It was published in 2008, and it was the city's first climate action plan. And with all that work, they got the city to commit, they got the city staff people together, and they would meet in cafes or in their church groups or in their homes across Evanston for months, for years, trying to implement this plan. And finally, the state legislature in Illinois passed this legislation that allowed a municipality to choose where its energy came from. It was very difficult, though, because it will only be done by referendum. So everybody in the town would have to agree. And so because there was this big group of residents that was already established working on this issue, they reached out to their neighbors, they reached out to their family members, the people in school, and this referendum got passed in the city. And not only did it allow the city of Evanston to pursue its own energy source, but the residents agreed that they would be willing to pay more if it meant getting renewable energy. And so at the end, when it came to 2012, and that 140 megatons or metric tons of carbon dioxide was, has it been reduced? The city of Evanston was able to say, yes, we actually did it. Every single house in Evanston is now powered by renewable energy. And we did meet our goal, as impossible as it might have been. And, they were one of the only communities that did it. And though we're having a little bit of trouble today implementing the goals of the carbon action plan that's there, it really shows that when we work together, we can really make these things happen. So that is my story from my research I've been doing recently. And thanks so much for letting me tell it.
Thank you, Jack. And you're going to be greatly surprised. We have someone here that knows Stephen and was part of that
sure.
project. So can you identify yourself and tell us how you were involved? Judy, do you feel comfortable?
Yeah, it was through my synagogue, JRC. I was the rep for the Interreligious Sustainability Circle, and we met in the basement of the Quaker church, the Quaker meeting house, Friends House, whatever they called it, on Greenleaf, is where when I was participating. I don't remember what year I stopped, but Stephen's a great guy. Great guy.
That's just beautiful. I love that we actually have someone here that, as the story started unfolding, it was this incredible personal connection. So the world's a small place when you start looking around. And Jack is very involved in the environment and doing lots of research and exciting projects that I think you will be following him along in the future that he is headed down the path of.
Jack,
So
do you have a copy of that one, whatever it was called, that said one?
No, Stephen said he has to dig it out of a storage unit. So I don't know if anyone else has it, but
I'll
I
have
can
to
ask
look.
him.
I kept some for a while, but I think I might
Okay.
have gotten rid of them.
Oh, you'll have to stay connected. All right. That is what happens. Stories bringing you together and connecting you. That is terrific. All right, Nancy, let's keep on moving. We've had 4 stories about change, but unique in each way. So let's see what number 5 is going to be.
So number 5 is Jilly's son.
Let's give Jilly a hand. We got to wake everybody up again. You've been listening so well for an hour, and now we're on to Jilly. Jilly, I love your backdrop. It makes us feel happy and sunny.
Okay, so I'd like to share my story of my hometown. I used to live in a tropical area in China. And in this city, since the weather is quite warm, so there's no such tough snowy winter as in Chicago. Most the people there are local, but one day there was a group of people who came from other provinces, and then they just settle down under the bridge, and they don't have any residents to stay. So local people just wonder were they from and why they just come with family, and there are 50s of them. And towards all the curious question, they did not provide any answer of where they are from, why they move here, why they settle down, and how long will they stay, etc. So the local people just kept kind of observing them. What are they doing? So they are a little community. They lived on collecting, for example, they do the garbage collection, and they divide them into reusable things, and they pick the thing that they need for their life and clean it and reuse it. And this is how they live, actually. So there are kids, there are small kids, there are women pregnant, there were elders. It's like a small village in the town. And finally, we try to, local people are still very curious about them, and quite surprised by this kind of lifestyle. So some of them try to get acquainted with them, try to be friends with them and talk with them. And my mom is one of them. So she got in touch with them, and then sometimes we have clothes that we no longer need, so we gave them to this group and to see if they can reuse it. And there are some stuff that in our home that we no longer need it, we clean it and give them. And they all accepted very politely, but with a lot of dignity. And they thank us. They also keep what they need, and they don't want more than they need, actually. So if local people sometimes give a lot of things, if they don't really need them and they cannot use it or clean it to reuse it, they just perhaps leave for other people. And so we are kind of become friends, but they always kept the secret. Where are they from? And then how long will they stay in the area? And so to a certain time, the government began to intervene, because the place where they settle, sometimes there are safety issues, there are other, so the government get a little bit worried about the situation of this group. So they try to intervene and try to ask them, why don't they find, for example, a more safe residence? Why don't they try to ask the question? They deal with the government also with a lot of dignity, and they reassure them they will not create any problem for the local people, and they just want to continue to live the lifestyle that as they live now. And the government finally decided not to disturb them anymore. And we saw the little kids growing up. They become, and to our surprise, they're kids without all these financial and support of normal family have. They grew up in a very healthy, and they seldom get sick. They are very joyful. They run in the street, and they have their family. They have parents around them, and they play around in the street, and they never do any bad things towards the local people. So so this situation lasted for a few years, and so the local people's curiosity begin to decrease, and they are kind of considered one community among them. They are also local like them, and they accepted their their existence, even they still don't have a fixed residence. And their lifestyle are kind of become inspiring for the local people, because we finally found out, because local people, they have a lot of, how to say that, a lot of expectation towards their kids. You have to go to have very good grades, you have to go to very good school, you need to become rich and powerful, something like that. But very progressively, the lifestyle of this small community also inspire the local people, because they saw their kids grow up very happy, and they study also. They have their homeschooling, and they do the math, they do the reading, they do everything that all kids need to learn. They respect their parents, and they live a very simple lifestyle. They don't pursue anything extra than they truly need it. So their lifestyle kind of influence the local community, and they begin to think differently about their current lifestyle, and they think perhaps not so necessary to spend so much money to buy things, perhaps not necessary to throw away all the things that to buy new fashionable products. And so finally, they get along. Till now, it's almost 10 years. So finally, I got to know a little bit about their story of their origin. They used to live in another province in the mountain, and they have their own religion. And in certain time, they got—
1 minute warning.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
They got finally they decided to leave their hometown and move to our town, and then continue to they still continue to live that like that and become part of our community. Okay, thank you.
Lily, that's wonderful. Let's give her lots and lots of shaking hands and applause. You took us into a world that we would have never known about. And what a lesson that story gives us, that less is more, and a whole lifestyle that's completely different than most of the lifestyles that we're experiencing right now. That is a lovely story. Definitely less and is more, and inspiring, because everyone was experiencing the dignity of the human condition when they seem to be interacting with these people. Thank you, thank you. And you're getting wonderful chats. There's so much to learn from your story. Indeed, indeed. And less is more. I scrolled back just now and looked at Jack's other chats here. My goodness, we've really connected into the Evanston world and all kinds of responses. So I think that story was so connected to our book too. And we can learn from each other so much. Well told. I love the dignity that was characterized by all of that. All right. Oh my goodness, the evening is going very, very, very quickly. All right, Nancy, who is number 6?
So Geneva Norman showed up and would like to tell her story. So Geneva, if you're there, we'd love to have you.
Is she here?
She sent me a text. There you are. Yeah. Welcome.
Let me take that off. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I apologize for many things. One is that first of all, my story is nowhere near as uplifting and happy as these wonderful stories that everyone has told so far. But I'm just going to tell it this time, and it is somewhat timely. And the other sad thing is I don't have any real answers like the other tellers have had. I'm going to sing a little bit, if you don't mind, at the beginning and end of this story, as I like to do. The song that I'm going to sing a little bit of is a song, a Negro spiritual, sang by enslaved people at the time of death, because during those horrific times, it was thought that being dead was better than being alive and enslaved. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world. The troubles of the world. The troubles of the world. So for years, I've been fine. Everything was good. I mean, Black people and white people still had issues, but we were working on them. Even the most heinous of problems, that of our protectors, the police, actually killing Black men and women, was, shall we say, being worked out. Then one day I got a phone call and the phone rang, ring. And I said, hello? It was my daughter. Mom, turn on the news. The police are killing a Black man right now. She screamed into the phone. So I quickly turned to MSNBC, and there, to my surprise, I saw in crystal clear, vivid color on my humongous TV screen, a police officer with his hand in his pocket, nonchalantly looking out into the community. He was kneeling below near the front tire. The weight of his entire body was supported by the neck of a Black man. The Black man was lying there, stomach to the ground, his beautiful Black face distorted by the position of the officer's slender knee on his neck. And he kept it there for a total of 9 minutes and 29 seconds. 9 minutes and 29 seconds of him. I'm sorry, can you see me? Because all of a sudden you've disappeared. Oh.
No, we can see.
We can see you. You got a little lower, but we can see you.
You can't see me. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so I can't see you, but I'll just go on. Anyway, with his, he had his knee on his neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. And for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, that man cried, "Mama, mama, mama." His knee was on his carotid artery, the bloodline to his heart and to his lungs. And his heart into his brain, and also over his trachea to his lungs. So I don't know what we're going to do about things like that. I know that as we have seen an increase in these kinds of issues lately, that we all have a heightened awareness, and we are all working to find ways to make things better. And as I said, I have no idea what the real answer is. But I do know that it's not an easy answer. Whatever it's going to be, it's going to be, I think the answer is multi-partite. And I think it's going to require all of us to pay attention and to work together. And we're going to have to ask and answer the questions of each other that will make a lot of this make better sense. The uncomfortable questions that we all need to have answered. So I'm just going to end with the end of that song. no more weeping and a wailing, no more weeping and a wailing, no more weeping and a wailing. I'm going home to be with my God. Thank you. Gosh,
I am so glad you arrived. I am so glad that you came and shared that story, because in a way it sort of starts to wrap all of this up in terms of working together. And someone else in the chat in an earlier story wrote, the key is to listen to each other. So it's going to take working together and listening. And I don't think anybody has the answer, but the only way the answer is going to happen is we have to ask the questions and we have to listen. And I think in story world, that's what stories are all about, are sharing that. Nancy, I don't know, do we have time for a breakout, or do we want to, where are we? It's 20 after, and I'm not quite sure what to do in this moment. Help me out.
Okay, so we could have one. Mark, are you prepared to tell us a story? And if
Yeah, I've got one ready.
you do, so Mark is our last storyteller, and if we have time, we could. I mean, you tell me when yeah.
Well, I can't stay past 6:30 because I have that play.
I know. So, well, I'd love to hear Mark's story. So why don't we go with Mark?
And if you all want to stay longer, then I can say goodnight and you can keep going.
We'll
right,
have Mark be our finale. I think that's appropriate.
I
think so too.
I love it. And he's great. He is a great storyteller. Mark, take it away.
Sure. Yeah. This is not like necessarily my story. I was able to get, it's a story about an organization that was founded in the town I'm from, and I was able to get involved a little bit because it was founded by two close friends of mine, but this is more a story about them and the work that they've done. I'm from Alexandria, Virginia, which is a pretty good sized town right outside of the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. And we're situated right on the edge of the Potomac River, which is one of the 5 major rivers of Virginia. I don't know if anyone in this room has been to Alexandria or knows this river at all. If you have, I'm really sorry. If you haven't, I strongly discourage you from ever going to see it. The Potomac River is one of the brownest bodies of water I've seen in my entire life. It is a sickly green and brown color. It's full of leaves and algae and so much trash constantly being thrown in. And it's just a symbol of everything that feels wrong with the way we've treated the climate in our society. When I was in middle school, we had to do science fair every year. So 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, each year we had to do a new project that related in some way to something that was exciting to us, and we would create a hypothesis, plan a whole experiment around it, and then at the end, we would present it in a little competition that would happen at our school. So it ranged from everything you can imagine. From in 7th grade, my project was exploring how different amounts of caffeine would impact the reproductive cycle of fruit flies, to in 8th grade, I did a project on how different forms of physical activity would impact heart rate. So lots of broad range of activities and projects that would occur. But in 8th grade, 2 close friends of mine, their names were Ella and Tessa, they created a project together where they decided to explore the Potomac River. They took water samples at 5 different locations throughout the river. One was right by our school, one was a little offshoot called Cameron Run, one was right on the shore, right outside of DC, so in one of the most polluted areas. And there were 2 more that I cannot think of at this time, but 5 different water samples throughout the river, and they would test the water to see what was going on, why the water was so brown, and what different areas would have that would impact the water quality. what they discovered that no matter where it was, this water was dirty. It had an alkali level that was so high it was dangerous to all the populations that lived there, all the fish that lived inside the water, and any birds and other animals that would be drinking water from this water source. It was a danger to them as well. So they quickly decided, this is something that we need to make a change about. We can't stick with this. We have to do something. At their presentation, as they gave this final presentation of their project to a panel of judges that was made up of science teachers from around the area, one of the teachers said to them, "It is time for students to be doing something. You can make the change yourself." And the two of them said, "You're right. We need to do this. It is our space. We've done the research. Now let's go put it into practice." So they went out and they started at Cameron Run, which was a little offshoot of the Potomac River that ran right by our middle school and right through their community. And they started having weekly trash cleanups. They would go out and walk right along the river, about a 1.5 mile long stretch of river. And any trash they found, they would fish it out. They had these big nets that they would reach out into the river, and they would fish out all the trash. And they would do this so that they could see change happening in the river and making it cleaner, even in just a small part at their little river offshoot. As they got into high school, they decided that they could take this even bigger. So they formed the Cameron Run Watershed Project. They started doing more trash cleanups, they started getting involved with community projects, and eventually what they led into was starting to host educational opportunities for students at the elementary school nearby, Douglas MacArthur Elementary School, to go and make change themselves. They would go to these schools and go to the science classes, and they would teach about the water quality, and they would show little photos of the ducklings that lived nearby, and they would do all these different projects to make sure that students knew this is the water that we have, and this is the world that we live in, and this is what we can do to change it. I moved out of Alexandria a couple years ago, so I don't know how much it's stuck around to this day, but by the time I was leaving the town, not only had Tessa and Ella gone on to college, but they had managed to continue the group and found new students from the high school nearby to take on the mantle after them. It was still a growing project. They started getting funding from the Alexandria local government to make these projects a bigger deal. And they had plans to expand into the whole Chesapeake Bay community and connect with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation to take this project beyond just the Alexandria community, beyond the Cameron Run watershed, and make it a whole project. It's a reminder to me every time I think back, every time I check in with Tessa and Ella, send them a text, send them a hey, that we have the power to make change ourselves. Even from 8th grade, my friends and myself got the opportunity to start this project and to make the change that we needed to see in our community to make a better and cleaner water environment for everyone in our town. And that's just something that drives me to this day, that no matter who we are, no matter where we're from, when we started, we can make the change if we start within ourselves.
Oh, that was wonderful, Mark. Oh, that was just fabulous, because that's just what I wrote to end the evening. Life offers the opportunity for change when we recognize the change can happen first within ourselves. Did you look at my sheet that I had written the ending? I just want to say this was so perfect, because we began with Lily and saw the change in her world, and we finish with Mark, and he brings the same exciting potential for the future. So this connecting to the book has been beautiful. What an evening. All of you tellers, thank you. Let's give everybody a thank you again for the telling and the uniqueness of it. And the comments were as inspirational as I could ever want, pointing out that we need to listen to each other, pointing out that it's a grassroots, that it's going to happen. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Jack, for connecting us to Evanston and how it's a long process. It doesn't happen overnight. We have to be patient, but we have to act. And that's what both Lily and Mark really brought to us. Just to say a few things to wrap us up here. Just help us bring
My
the evening
gosh.
to a beautiful close.
I guess I just want to say I'm a senior. I have been to 4 of the 5 intergenerational storytelling events. And this has just been like a wonderful last one. I don't know if alumni are allowed to come in, but hopefully I'll be able to see some more. But yeah, such inspirational stories of change and then the changes that we still need to see in this world. I hope that this night has been as impactful to everyone else as it has been for me. Just seeing other people, even in our little boxes, across generations, hearing stories, and coming together as a community. And that's how we make change, is coming together as a community. So thank you all so much for taking time out of your evening and joining us tonight.
Thank you, Jessa. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Carrie. And thank you to everyone who is here tonight. Be safe, stay warm, and remember that we're all connected.
Well said. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for coming.
Good night. Good night.